Alright guys, had to come back again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Probably the biggest story in the Call of Duty world this year so far has been the mega $680 million lawsuit from Scum and Hex against Activision Blizzard over all of the drama that's happened behind the scenes with the CDL over the last several years. There's been an update on this as of last night, which seems to indicate that this lawsuit is going to the next level. Steps are being taken, potentially indicating as well that Scum and Hex do have, at least in part, a legitimate case to be made. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Matches, of course, beginning again in just a couple of days' time. Also, plenty of records set last weekend. Maybe these are some things that should be expected with, you know, Rio coming into the pool and stuff like that. But have a look at this, really. Search and Destroy streak record at 11 and non-traded kill record at 13 set by aBeZy, right? One of that crazy spree in that Minnesota Rocket game, of course, that they played. Insight as well set an 11 hardpoint streak. Also, the big one that was notable certainly was Shotzzy breaking the hardpoint kill record at 43. Maybe it was expected that would go at some points given the fact that Rio is now a map, and in the early days when Rio was starting to get scrims, people were dropping like 50 on that map in scrims. But to be fair, in early scrims and in 8s and stuff like this, the game plays a bit different, plays a bit faster, and to get over 40 anywhere is very impressive. Of course, old sub-base as well was pretty remarkable for this, and 50, even 60 was possible on that map if things went your way. But now with the sub-base changes, the spawns as they are now, and of course Rio being a thing, it makes sense. Will somebody break 43? It's definitely possible that somebody will do more than that this season, but that's got to be up there, right? So yeah, 43 kills for Shotzzy in the hardpoint. Pred also had 88 engagements as well elsewhere, so that's pretty absurd for a single hardpoint game. And then Hook set the S&D first blood record at 6 on the Invasion up against the Los Angeles Grillers. So yeah, plenty of records broken this weekend. Possibly more to come as well. Thought this is cool to share for you guys as well. So of course the New York Subliners won the World Championship last year. They've been doing lots of community related stuff and actually giveaways as well, such as an authentic New York Subliners Championship ring. I don't know how much these cost to make because the league will create 5 of them, I think. So they'll give 4 to the players, well, one each of the players, and then I think 1 to the coach. And I'm pretty sure the league then says, hey, if you want us to make more, or whatever contractor they use to make them, then you can pay us whatever the number is, possibly in the thousands for a batch of, I don't really know, depends exactly how they're made and what they're made of, that's a question. But, you know, obviously these are pretty valuable things, and I think the CDL will pay for 5 of them, and then anything else the team wants, they can then pay on top. I think that's how it's worked anyway. That may not be the case anymore, but clearly the Subliners have a spare one. So an authentic New York Subliners Championship ring is available. If you own the bundle and then you complete the form, you just need to put in a couple of details, a picture of, I think, your character with the bundle on, and then you get into this one. So thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, this would be, well, it's interesting, right? I know that Killer was talking a while ago, selling his championship ring, because if he's struggling financially, he's like, well, maybe I'll sell it, but you know, I don't think that would be a good idea to do so personally, but this could be pretty much the first time that somebody outside of an actual championship winning team has owned one of these, you know, authentic rings. So pretty cool stuff, and it actually does look spectacular, right? Let's be honest here, the way they put this one together. Also, again from FaZe COD News, these guys are cooking lately. X has talked about this on the flank. The top 4 teams are different to the rest. And obviously the data backs it up emphatically, as we can see in this analysis. So pretty much every single pro, the only pros that this doesn't apply to are actually ErikBooM, which is kind of remarkable, but plenty of these names have relatively small sample sizes, like Geo, for example, and even Capsule wasn't around for that long. So these are the only players that have a better KD against the top 4 teams than against the bottom 8 teams. But the vast majority of players this obviously doesn't apply to, especially even from those teams themselves. Okay, Cell has a 1.25 against the other top 3 of the top 4 teams, but that's still lower than he has elsewhere, which is obviously makes sense. The biggest decreases so far are actually from Dashy, from Fame, and you know, Shotzzy's on here. Actually, a lot of the Subliners guys are on here as well. I think it probably makes sense that, again, the sample size isn't massive at this point in the season. For example, from OpTic size, you know, Dashy, for example, he has a 1.2 against the lower 8 teams. He has a 0.82 against the top 4 teams. But they haven't really played a top 4 team in a little bit of time now. Obviously, they played Subliners right at the start of the season. They've played FaZe now a few times. But, you know, Toronto, they play this weekend, which is obviously massively exciting. And then they played the Subliners after that. So that will be kind of some of the testing grounds. Some players, though, just fry regardless. Simp is up here. Cellium is up here. Like, this is average KD across the top. Scrap, Pred, Skyz. It's pretty funny, really. that basically all of the top guys are from the top 4 teams, apart from Geo and Attach are actually right up here as well. And I think of the top players of the stage so far, like top 10 KDs, I think 2 of them are Vegas players as it stands, which is actually really cool. And I know that they have an easier strength of schedule than you might otherwise predict, but I do think that Vegas are... Well, who's your dark horse right now? As it stands, we've got 2 more weeks of qualifiers going into the major, but if there was a dark horse, obviously the answer to this during Major 1 was Rocker in hindsight. I don't think that many would have said Rocker going into the tournament, but I guess maybe it did make sense. They, of course, got top 4. They were the only team that wasn't a top 4 team, of course, Subliners, FaZe, OpTic, Ultra, to make it into the top 4, make it to the championship Sunday. Is it plausible that another team this time again makes it to Sunday, or will the top 4 be the theoretical top 4 that we just mentioned, or will another team make it through? Because if the bracket worked out in a certain way based on the qualifiers, then it's definitely possible, right? I mean, let's say Vegas go 6-1 in the qualifiers, which is possible. They're currently 3-1. They play like Boston and Ravens, and I think their other game isn't too hard either. So they find themselves in a position where 5-2, 6-1 is legitimately possible. And that would give them a comfortable top 4 seed pretty much going into the major, right? Because OpTic are going to play some top teams, you know, Toronto and Ultra, Toronto and New York, they play OpTic soon. So, you know, those teams are going to start racking up some losses somewhere. So Vegas have the chance to be a top 4 seed, really, going into this event. And if that's the case, then depending on the way the bracket works out, you might get a battle of like, you know, OpTic and Toronto round 1, potentially, depending on how things work out, which then could give Vegas potentially a passage through to top 6. And I don't know, if you guys had to predict a dark horse, who's it going to be? Because it's quite clear right now, there are some shocking teams in this league. Gorillas are terrible, Surge are terrible, Miami are terrible. So, you know, those teams are basically a write-off as far as I'm concerned in terms of doing well at this event. Boston have not impressed me really at all. Yes, they beat Rocker Game 5. Rocker themselves are in a bit of a shambles at the moment anyway. So, you know, it's only really Vegas that are showing some promise, and Thieves, I would say. I know they've only won a couple of pretty close game 5s, but I do think Thieves have shown some potential. So to me, it's between those 2 in terms of dark horse for this event, unless you think that Seattle are going to pull off a miracle, but I don't really see it personally. And of course, more will become clear over the next couple of weeks as well as we go through the final couple of weeks of qualifiers. But the big storyline here that dropped on basically the 15th of February was Hex and Scump bringing the lawsuit against the Call of Duty League and Activision. Now, of course, it turned out that it was not with other CDL owner groups. They've been named as kind of co-conspirators involuntarily, and it's really Hex and Scump have multiple grievances, and for very good reason indeed, with the way things have been handled behind the scenes over the last several years. Hex has many reasons why, Scump has many potentially even stronger reasons why, especially from the perspective of decisions that the league has made affecting his bottom line, contracts that he had to sign, getting fined for doing that Raid Shadow Legend stream in the off-season, getting forced into effectively signing that contract before the kickoff tournament without a lawyer getting to look at it. Of course, there was big talk about that at the time, and of course, that's now coming up again. Hex has multiple grievances as well, especially when he was apparently told that he wasn't the type of owner the league was looking for, which of course, massively controversial in and of itself, especially given what Hex has done for this scene. So there's multiple elements of this lawsuit, of course. We can't go through all again today. There's a great episode of, is it the Four Horsemen with Monte Cristo, Thorin, Richard Lewis, and I think a lawyer called, was it Harris maybe, that they brought on, who kind of went through all that, analysing all the different elements of the lawsuit and where this potentially goes. However, we were expecting at some point an update, right? It's not like this happens and then nothing happens forever. Like at some point we're going to hear something more on this. Now Benjay Nasim, here he goes. I mean, what a guy. He's actually spotted there is an update on this story. I'm pretty sure as well that on the filings for this, you can like sign up for updates, I think on the website, so you'll get emails when there's any like updates to the filing. I'm pretty sure that's what might have happened here. Or Ben just noticed this because this has happened a couple of days ago now. Now, like, I'm not a lawyer. I don't really know what this whole thing means. But I just wanted to share that things are progressing in some direction. And according to what people are talking about, possibly a good direction in terms of Hex and Scump actually having a case to be made. Because the difficulty is for them, they're going to have to put up money to fight this case. They must feel like they have a case. And I think they do have a case. Like, there is parts of these things that if they get talked about from the Activision side, there's definitely ways that Activision have wronged these guys, I would say. And I think there should be some sort of a settlement there. Now, whether you buy the whole idea that Activision has this monopoly over the space that they shouldn't be allowed to have, that's an entirely separate and very complicated legal debate. But I think there are elements here where they do have a case. The question was, from my side, they've got to put up money for the lawyers to fight this. Activision, now they're a Microsoft as well. They could bring in the big guns, you know, like if they want to drag this out into perpetuity, they can probably do so, find all sorts of things that they can do and just effectively try and bleed Hex and Scump dry from a legal side. I don't know if they're necessarily going to do that, but that was kind of my concern coming in, that is this really going to end well for all parties? Especially because if Hex and Scump were to lose a lot of money fighting this, then basically the status was to not change at all, then what happens for the future of OpTic or for whatever right going forward? So I think there's some concerns on what this means for the future of what we want to see from a competitive COD perspective going forwards. But I think it's good they're fighting this, right? Because it's making it very clear indeed that things need to change, and I'm sure they will change, quite possibly as a result of this. So just to mention the arbitration point. So this was a statement that came out the other day. It's only a couple of pages here, so there's only a few lines of this. This is dated the 1st of March, so just a couple of days ago now, talking about the fact that certain elements of the case are moving into arbitration. Now, they don't go on to say which elements of the case, unfortunately, and potentially more could get brought in over time as well. Ina, who was the lawyer we held on the Dope Check watch party the other week to discuss this when it was all going down, says that it's possible that the player agreements and the franchise agreements require resolutions for disputes via binding arbitrations, which might be what this is. So it's similar to a court resolution, but there's no jury and it's kind of done, well, behind the scenes in a private, confidential setting. Again, I don't know if what Connor's talking about here makes any sense, but he's using big words, so he must know what he's talking about. Like, this is classic kind of a Reddit lawyer analysis here, or Twitter lawyer in this case, x.com lawyer. But yeah, so it's not like they're settling necessarily, but I don't know. The feeling is for me that if this is moving into arbitration to some extent, they must have a case in some parts, because they're obviously going to discuss this with an arbitration committee or whatever happens. A private hearing with all parties to discuss the legitimacy of the issues. One or more arbitrators will provide a binding final decision on whatever disputes are listed on the arbitration schedule. Whatever disputes are not listed are free to move to court and or settlement. Hex and Scump can choose to move the remaining matters to arbitration as well, should they choose to do so. So not exactly sure what this means and what is going to happen here, but the feeling possibly is that they have a case at least in some parts. And probably they're going to need to bring in the big gun lawyers, such as we see on screen here, to actually make this work. So I definitely don't think this is the end of the situation. I mean, obviously it's not, right? We're going to have a resolution at some point, and I'm sure that it's going to continue trundling on in the background over the next several months. So leave all your thoughts, of course, as always, in the comment section below. I also think that there's other things going on in terms of negotiations with the CDL right now. Rumor had it the other day that the owners are trying to negotiate with Activision for greater revenue shares on various different angles, which does make a lot of sense. If that goes through, if those negotiations are successful, maybe that means the CDL survives, but maybe it also means that the CDL teams to say, okay, well, Activision agreed to this, how about they agree to this? How about they agree to this? And keep pushing things further and further in the envelope until maybe we get back to a point where the Call of Duty League looks more like it did several years ago before this whole franchising model actually happened. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Just one final thing I wanted to say here from Boston Breach, of course, talked about them earlier, the fact that they're kind of struggling right now doesn't get any easier for them, right? They come up with this, the road to Major 2 continues. Of course, they were losers back in Major 1. Ain't looking great for them this time around either, to be fair, because they play OpTic and FaZe in the upcoming weekends. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.